Welcome back, builders. This week we are looking at Baratos, the Phoenix Empire. This is a pretty cool nation. So these guys are related to Therados. These are survivors of the Telkines and their civilization after the previous Pantocrator destroyed it. They fled and founded other colonies. This is one of those kind of Mediterranean-inspired nations, so has ties to Archocephali, has ties to Ermor, Therados, like was mentioned. They also have really close ties to Hinnom and to Machaca. So after the disaster happened, they were kind of left without divine leadership, and they ended up kind of forming a cult that worshipped the Melkarts. That was, working out okay for them. But then the Machacan traitor queen showed up, and they're like, well, actually, yeah, we're waiting to marry the new god, so we should be in charge. And they thought they were pretty clever because that worked until the Melkart showed up and were like, yeah, I'm totally into that. So the place has gotten pretty messed up. They've gotten really into blood sacrifices, and it is not good times to be in Baratos. As for national features, this is a nation that has sailing. So very powerful utility movement there. They have a special ability that they're able to trace income across the ocean. So normally you have to have a land connection to a fort in order to get income. With this, as long as you can trace it over the ocean, and you don't have to own the ocean, you just have to be able to trace a line to there. You also get increased income in coastal forts. It's a pretty noticeable bump in income. We get a special, I think, 2 special mages that we can recruit in coastal forts that you cannot get on inland forts. We prefer heat scale +1. Now for military, it says archers light and medium, lancers and elephants. This is one of those nations that I think they need to go through and kind of reevaluate what they call light and medium, because there are many troops in the early age that are labeled heavy infantry with about 10 protection, and on our troops, our quote-unquote mediums go up to 14. We have several troops that have 14 protection, 10, which would be equal to that previously said heavy, and then 9 on our lighter troops. So realistically, we have medium and heavy troops for the most part. As for magic, we have a decent spread. We've got pretty good blood, fire, air, water, and earth, and a tiny bit of astral. Our priests are strong. We can do cap recruit holy 2s, and we can do blood sacrifices. We'll talk about that when we get to some of our blood mages. As for scales and blessing, as mentioned, we have the heat limit +1, so we like it a little bit warmer. We're also able to build advanced forts, so we can go up to castles, just like Archocephali and Atlantis can. As for units, we have a pretty good spread, ranging from pretty light on the militia, but realistically speaking, medium to heavy infantry. We also have a decent archer with decent equipment. We have some cavalry options, we have some long spear options, we have elephants, and we have a serviceable but not great sacred. So let's take a quick look here. As mentioned, we have a militia unit. It is a pretty standard militia unit. Not the worst thing ever, very low morale, probably won't get too many of those. We have an archer, does have a helmet, does have some armor, standard short bow. Notable because we have both fire and air magic high enough to do flaming arrows and wind guide type spells, so these guys can be quite useful. Baratian Spearman. This is what I guess the game is calling our light troop, but it's got 9 protection, so I'd call that pretty decent. Running with a length 3 spear and javelins. Very cost-effective troop. For 10 gold, 9 resources, 9 recruitment, this is a troop that's good enough to expand with. You will struggle with things like heavy cav and whatnot, but for that price, you can pump these guys out pretty decently, even if you do go with some pretty crummy scales. So very usable for expansion if you'd like to. We have our standard Baratian soldier. Again, this is pretty standard troop, 10 protection, but he only has 11 attack with just a short sword. 13 defense is decent, has a fine shield, fine helmet, okay armor, very usable troop. Respectable, notable for the 11 attack, so above average slightly. We have a heavy spearman. This is a troop I quite like. This generally makes up my line infantry once I'm past my initial expansion, once I can afford them. 12 gold, 19 resources, 14 recruitment. Not breaking the bank on this, although resources are a smidgen high. But you're getting 14 protection. You've got a hoplite helmet, which is quite good. We have decent armor. I'd say good armor. Good shield. And we have a long spear. So length 4. So you can repel even normal spears. And we have formation fighter. So very good troop here. Takes buffs rather well. Good attack density for a line troop. Very good. We have our elite soldier. Down to the short sword again, but notable for having 12 attack, wearing the heavier armor. So if you're not worried about being repelled by your target, these guys can hit a little bit better, although they lose formation fighter. So you're going down in attack density from 4 attacks per square down to just 3. Overall, I tend to stick with the long spear troops over these, but you could totally use these. There's nothing wrong with them, especially if you're fighting something that's not going to repel you. If you're getting repelled, you're probably better off with the other troop. Next up, we have a Lancer unit. I would call this light cav still. I guess you could say medium cavalry. It does have 9 protection. On the Warhorse himself, they do have leather barding, no head protection notable. So not the best protection ever, but you have a light lance. You're really fast. You've got the cav speed of 24. Not super expensive, but not super cheap either. Very usable unit. Grab a few of these, put them on a hold and attack rear, snipe out some leaders with them. They're perfectly serviceable, if not stellar in anything. You have elephants, and these elephants have archers on their back. Notable for having 9 morale and 6 magic resist. So all the standard elephant weaknesses apply here. But 2 archers is okay. Gives them a little bit of shooting they can do as they're running in. And you can do elephant expansion if you know what you're doing. If you're going to try something like that, you probably want to do several test games and find out which enemies you can do it against and which you cannot. So things that are going to be able to come in, hit the elephant pretty hard, give them afflictions, or get their morale to break are going to be just absolute banes. And if you're mixing your elephants with other troops, when they retreat, they're happy to stomp on you on the way out. So be careful if you're going to use elephants. Know what they're good against and what they're not. When magic starts coming out, the elephant's 6 magic resist is a huge hole in their defenses, as is the very low morale and being an animal. So a lot of things can target this and really mess them up. As for our sacred, we have Colossi Warriors. So these are the Machakan type troops. They came along as like bodyguards of the queens that came over. They're okay. They are size 4, so you can only fit 2 in a square by default. If you do go larger, you can still fit those 2. Little spoiler for what we're going to go to for our bless. They're wearing the decent armor, so they're at 14. They got the shield. They got an okay helmet. They're just using a short sword, but they're good with it. 13 attack and 20 damage is very respectable. Having the 1 attack, however, and good defense, but repels will happen. They are of course, our sacred, and they have Bodyguard 2. Bodyguard 2 on this unit is actually kind of notable because we are going to do blood hunting with this nation. And especially in Dom 6, there's a lot of events that pop off of blood hunting, and having some bodyguards to keep your blood hunters safe is pretty important. So if nothing else, even if you took no bless whatsoever, I think you would want to recruit some of these guys to have bodyguards on your blood hunters. Other than that, I would say they are okay. They're usable, but with a single attack, they're not going to be a super killing unit. They have good strength, they have good HP, they have okay defenses, but other than that, they're nothing stellar. So a usable unit, probably not worth like a Hellbless by themselves. As for commanders, we have a standard scout here. Nothing overly special about him. Stealthy 55, so he is actually relatively stealthy compared to some. We have our captain. He is wearing the standard kind of heavier armor that we have. He has a shield. He has a hat. Using just the short sword that most of our other troops have. Hunter leadership, so he can do formations. We are definitely a nation that wants to be in formation. We do not want to sit in box formation. He has sailing, though. And note, though, his sailing is max size 3, so he cannot sail with your sacreds. So if you're planning on doing sailing, you have to have a plan for that. Otherwise, perfectly usable troop. Not super duper expensive, although 140 gold is not the cheapest either. Next, we're moving up into casters, mage units. We have the mage pilot. These are one of our coastal recruiters. 1 air, 1 water, no random. So by themselves, those paths are not particularly great. You would probably need to use a gem to get going on these guys. Maybe you could summon storm power or summon water power, and then they could get into some usable stuff. They do have sailing, max size 3 still. With 20 magical leadership, they could lead around some of your summoned units and sail with them. That might be why you'd want to use them. Otherwise, though, we have better. They're not sacred. They're 88 gold per year for 9 research. Next up, we have the Sage. Better unit, in my opinion. They have the same amount of upkeep per year at 88, but they have 11 research because they have Adept Researcher. They start with Earth 1, and they can random into a water or an air. So Alquills right off the bat, some of the low water stuff. With a single gem, you could Earth Power, and then you'd have Earth 2, and you could do something with that. But generally speaking, these guys are going to be probably your efficient researchers more than a battle mage. But it is nice to have an efficient researcher. Very good, especially for a nation like us. We have good mages. We want to get a lot of different magic out, so very useful recruit. Next up, we have our priest. This guy is a priest mage, so you do need to have both pieces of infrastructure up to recruit them. They have 80 gold, so they're even cheaper because they are sacred for 9. We do get a random of fire, air, earth, or blood, so we could be a blood 2 sacred unit. These are going to be your main blood hunters. They are also going to be probably your main blessers once you start using more sacred units. We have some sacred summons we're going to talk about, and it can be a little difficult to get everything blessed, so you'll probably need several of these guys. And with these paths, they can probably do something useful once they're done blessing. You will have to kind of think about what you want them doing. Fire's pretty easy. There's some Fire 1 spells that they can toss out easily enough. Blood 1 doesn't really have any good range things that they could do. Ditto with air and earth, but you can find some things for them to do, or even just advance up and keep blessing to make sure everything gets blessed. They can still sail, again, max size 3. They have the magic leadership, although it is lower. They do have some undead leadership. That is because undead leadership is for both undead and demons, and you might need these guys to lead around some of your summoned units. So a possibility for your main researcher, going to be your main blood hunter, so you will be getting these guys. Good unit overall. Good unit overall. They're not particularly old. They got plenty of time in there, so that's handy. Next up, we have our Stormcaller, notable for not being cap only, although he is coastal recruit only. Now, this is a very good mage. He does come in as old, unfortunately, and he's not sacred, so we can't knock that off easily. But he comes in at 232 gold a year, so pretty pricey. But air 2, water 2, random of fire, air, water, or astral. So very decent paths there. If you random into, especially the air, you could go all the way up to summon storm with this guy. The fire lets you cast acid spells, which are pretty good. The research isn't very efficient, but while you're getting them recruiting and not fighting with them, they're okay at researching. You know, they'll contribute. They have sailing like most of our other leadership. Again, size 3 is notable. Very good battle mage. You're going to be doing lightning spells. You're going to be doing acid spells. You're going to do water spells. Not major fire particularly, because you're only fire 1 really. But in your other paths, you're decent. Of note, you do have that astral magic, so you could get kind of a small-ish communion going if you had something particular you wanted to cast, a buff or two. But Well, with that only being a 25% chance, you're not going to have a lot of communion power going on there. So this is definitely worth thinking about where you're going to place your forts. You get extra income, you have special recruits, you can trace income from those forts. Very worth trying to get some coastal forts going for these guys. Finally, we have our capital only Bride in Waiting. Again, a very good mage. So Fire 2, Air 2, Earth 1. Our randoms are Fire, Air, Earth, and Blood at 100%, and then 10% chance for an extra. So you're looking at maybe getting up to Earth 2. From there, it might be worth considering empowering up to an Earth 3, so you can do Earth Boots, and then that will get you moving there. That'll also help you with making Dwarven Hammers, making your crafting more efficient. Fire, Air have some decent cross-path spells you could do. Fire spells can be popped out easily enough. They have no water, so you're not going to be doing acid with them. But some other buffing from air, some of the fire buffs are pretty good for this nation. And we have Blood 2. Blood 2, not the greatest. Like, a lot of Blood spells are more ritual-focused or battlefield-focused than just a straight, I cast spell to do damage, although they do have some of that. With Holy 2, you could enter into a small Sabbath and bump yourself up to a Holy 3 relatively easy. We'll talk about Sabbaths later, but they're like harder communions because you require blood slaves, which are the equivalent of gems. And just to start up your Sabbath, you're going to need 1 slave per person entering. So that's just a consumable that you're using up constantly. So while it's a possibility, there's a lot of micro that goes into that. If that's worth your time or not, maybe that just depends on how many other priests you have and how many sacreds you're toting around. They do have 232 upkeep, so similar to the Sage, but much more researchability, up to 21. So again, while they're waiting around to do other things, they're a decent researcher. They come with a golden spear and some head protection, so that's something. If you know, something comes around, they could poke it. Okay, 11 attack with 18 damage. Only 2 protection, though. So you're probably going to want them to self-buff in a little protection or maybe give them an item. They are 580 gold, so that is a lot of investment. So maybe if you've got a hammer out, you could give them, you know, a light piece of armor or something just to maybe protect that from some stray arrows. They do have 18 hit points, so they're not super duper squishy. They probably will survive like 1 arrow, but it is notable. Also, they're size 4, no sailing. So if you're playing sailing shenanigans, you're going to be looking at maybe like cloud trapezing to get these over there because they are not going to be sailing on your boat. They have good magic resistance. They have pretty good morale. They're good leaders, magic leadership, some undead leadership there. Good precision for a mage. 12 is very respectable. Very strong mage. Very strong mage. Cap only, and you're going to need that coastal income bonus because you're going to want to be pumping these out. I think ideally you'd want your capital probably on Bride in Waiting every single turn because it is a slow to recruit as soon as you're able to because they're just that good. Having the higher blood just allows other rituals and other spells that you're going to find quite good for your nation. As for who to prophetize, this is a nation that has usable sacreds that you're probably going to want to be putting out if you can afford their slightly high recruitment cost. You're going to be summoning some sacreds we'll talk about here in a moment. An early prophet is probably the way you want to go. Whether you want to do a scout or your captain is debatable. I often find myself wanting to do the captain so that I can have a sacred, heavier army out while I'm expanding. But this is a human captain. He's got 11 HP. He's got 13 protection and 14 defense. I've lost a lot of these guys. They are not a survivable leader. So if you go that route, just know they're probably going to die. You're probably going to be replacing them. So maybe you go scout. But then, are you bringing your scout to fights to bless people with your Holy 3? I don't know. I think ideally, maybe you'd want to use an expensive mage so that you can stop their upkeep costs by being the prophet. But these guys are expensive enough that you're probably not going to want these in early expansion. You're going to want to be pumping out tons and tons of spearmen, or maybe you're doing elephant expansion, or even just using your sacreds to expand. You can spend your money pretty effectively on this nation. So I don't know about the viability of getting one of these out early enough that I would make them my first prophet. But, you know, when that first prophet dies, maybe you upgrade, you know, the newer model gets to be one of these more expensive mages. We also have some summons that could be interesting to make your prophet. And we'll talk about one of them here in a moment. We have no national items, although I will specifically call out at Construction 5, you can craft a Sanguine Dowsing Rod, which is an item that helps with blood hunting. Costs, I believe it's 5 blood slaves. I'll have that on screen here. It is a very noteworthy item because you're going to want to be doing a lot of blood hunting. You're probably going to be using your priests for it, so they're only a blood 1. Having the Sanguine Dowsing Rod will have a noticeable impact in the number of blood slaves that you're getting. And you want that to be efficient because even though you could pump out lots and lots of hunters because you can recruit your priests from anywhere that has the infrastructure, you're just going to be having more and more unrest that you have to patrol down, which lowers your population even more. You're going to have to be either recruiting or summoning things to patrol. So having it more efficient is very beneficial. So I will definitely call out the Sanguine Dowsing Rod as, well, it's not a national item, one you're definitely going to want to get. You also have access to air and you have access to blood, which both have research items. So construction, while you're going up to Sanguine Dowsing Rod, will give you some other items that you'd be interested in anyways. As for national spells, we do have several summons, and we have no other rituals or combat spells. As for summons, we run quite the gambit here. We have elephant summons, not particularly noteworthy. Many nations have that. We have lion summons, again, not particularly noteworthy, although maybe you just need some cheap chaff that's not going to trample yourself. Maybe the lions could be interesting there. The Mazik, these guys are kind of interesting. They're demons that are summoned in with nature gems. So if you have nature income, which in the early age, there's a decent chance you'll have some nature indies, so you could start getting some of that in here. Notable for being size 2 and fly and stealthy and demons. So later on, if you're using demon buffs, these guys could benefit from that. And at size 2, if you're running with size 4 sacreds, one of these guys can slip in there to add a third person to the square. And he's got an 11 attack, even if the damage isn't the best. So very usable unit if you get the nature gems in. Another one in a similar vein is the Lilith. This is kind of like a succubus, but nature. Very, very close to the succubus. Stealthy, flying demon. Does have dream seduction, so you can try to seduce things. She is size 4, so she could seduce size 3 mages or commanders, even if you're not sharing a border. She like seduces them and they fly back to your territory together, essentially. So interesting there. These can be a bit hard because you're not going to have the most nature income, but if you happen to get some, it could be interesting to throw a few of these out. Kidnap some mages can always help with adding magic diversity. And then next up, we start in on our demons. First one is the Seir. These are summoned in with Scapegoat, and these guys are beasts. These guys are amazing. These guys are probably who you want to think about your bless for, but they're held back by one major weakness. The ritual spell that you use to summon them in can only be cast in a wasteland. And you're thinking to yourself, oh, I see wastelands in my games all the time. Well, just like with I guarantee you the game that you decide to play and you focus on these, there's no wasteland in your territory. I really wish you were guaranteed either your capital on a special wasteland or one nearby. Just like with has the same problem. They really, really want a swamp, and you don't have one necessarily guaranteed. That all being said, these guys are very, very solid. Size 4 again, so you can only fit 2 per hex normally, but they have 3 attacks, and baseline 13, 13, and 12 on the attacks for 16 damage each, and they're Berserker 4. So when they go Berserk, and with 7 protection, 28 HP, they're probably not going to get one shot, so they probably will go Berserk. They're going to add in 4 to the attack, strength, protection on that. So you're looking at 17 attack and 20 damage times 3 essentially. Very, very powerful unit there. Not the greatest defense, and it's going to go down when they berserk even further, but they're going to be so killy. You're going to have 6 attacks going out in a single square from these guys. They're relatively cheap. It is only, I believe, 8 blood slaves to get 2 of these guys, and all of your recruit from any infrastructured fort priest can do it. So you can easily scale up to the number that can spend the amount of blood slave income you're getting. Very solid unit here. I would consider your bless around these guys. Larger, you're again a size 4, so you could go up to size 5. That helps with our difficulties in getting everything blessed. Larger's just always on. It applies to our normal sacreds too. They're going to go up to size 5, so no problems there. That will increase your HP some more, and that will increase your strength some more. So you're going to have even more damage here. And our defense already isn't the best, and it's going to be junked when we go berserk anyways, so not a huge penalty there. Other things to consider, they have enough HP, and they're survivable enough that maybe regen could be interesting. Blood strength, that's a lot of free stats here. The fire bless, that when another sacred dies, you get bonuses. You're going to have enough of these guys that could be very viable. So lots of interesting blesses on this thing. Also a unit that likes to take buffs. So if you could give them Strength of Giants or protection buffs, anything like that would be worth thinking about. They're also demons. So when we look at blood magic buffs that only affect demons, so they would be affected by that. They do have Wasteland Survival, and they do have Dark Vision, so a unit that could help you get underground if that's something you want to do. They also don't need to eat, so unlike a lot of things that don't need to eat but are gluttons and do anyways, these guys will not affect how many troops you can have in a province. So that can be rather good since you do have decent human troops, so you can mix and match and not have to worry about increasing your supply footprint by using these guys. The reason that you might not want to go for a blessing on those would be your shed. These guys are like storm demons, but I think they're slightly more efficient. They have a range 40 ranged lightning attack. They're pretty good at it. They have storm immunity, so they're not messed up by that, and they do get storm power. So if you're running with storm for your Stormcaller mages, these guys could be good with that. They're flying and have storm immunity. So you could do some flying shenanigans while turning off other people's flying shenanigans in storms. They also have shock resistance. So again, if they were to fly in there and be fighting while lightning is coming down, 15 is pretty good. Even direct hits probably won't get through that. Of note, these guys, however, are not sacred. So you cannot bless them with anything. But they are still a good unit. Definitely worth using. And maybe you don't get a wasteland, so this is what you end up using your blood slaves for. Next up, we have a Melkart. So these are similar to what Hinnom has as their sacreds. They have the Dawn Blade, so a very strong magical weapon with a high attack, and a gore attack. So 2 attacks, one of which is length 2, one is length 0, but high damage. They're wearing good armor at 19 protection just out of the box, 18 defense, 15 attack. Very strong combatant here. This is probably super combatant territory, and if not, then very heavy thug. They come in with fear. They come in with fire resistance. Of note, though, they do have a lot of the weaknesses that Melkarts have. You cause a lot of unrest. One of these guys is 8 unrest. They also kill 80 pop just for being there. They also like to eat tons and tons of food. On the other hand, though, they are a summonable Holy 3. So this solves your blessing problems. They also have Blood 3. And they have Blood Searcher 3. So these guys will find a lot of blood slaves. Is it worth dedicating somebody you had to spend that much to summon in to Blood Hunt? I don't know. I don't think so. But if they have nothing else to do, I would probably prefer that they Blood Hunted than research with their very mediocre 15. But being sacred with stats like this, multiple attacks, good out-of-the-box defense, good HP, this would be a unit you might want to consider tailoring your Bless for. For him, I think he would enjoy similar things to the other Sacreds you have, although having that much HP makes a stronger argument for regen. These guys, even if all they had was, like, let's say regen, probably good enough to do stuff. They're random spells. They get 2 levels of either fire or air or earth, all of which are useful. Fire, you can do the Fire Shield and Phoenix Pyre. With air, you can do Mist Form. You can do Cloud Trapeze shenanigans. With earth, you can Earth Power and then do your strength buffs, do your protection buffs, do your magic resistance buffs. Of note, they are not labeled as demons, so you're not going to get the demon buffs there. But they have really high magic resistance anyways, good morale, great leadership. They have 30 magic and undead, so they can carry around some of your other summons. Very, very strong unit. And I think you need to at least take them into account when you're making your blessing. Also of note, they've only got 5 encumbrance. None of our Sacreds are super duper encumbered. Let's go back to our Seir. They only have 3. They don't super need reinvigoration, although almost anybody likes reinvigoration. And only our Brides-in-Waiting are sacred for our mages. So I don't think you want to go with a mage-type bless. These guys are so sporadic, and their pathing really is just going to kind of let you do like one set of buffs for them. These are guys who would really appreciate some other buffs from other mages. If you made them ethereal with one of your astral units, or you gave them the buffs that they didn't roll, these guys can be quite terrifying. A very, very strong summon that's not super duper expensive either once you get rolling. Finally, we can summon in Telkines. These are very good. The problem with them is they're pretty late in the game, and they can be a little hard to path for. That all being said, they bring in death magic that you don't otherwise have available. They have fire, high air, high water, high earth, and a random of all of those things. So with earth boots, you're at earth 5, you can ritual. With an easy booster for anything, you basically can get up to ritual range. Maybe fire would be a little difficult, but you could totally do it. They also give you the death that you don't otherwise have. Telkines can shapeshift, and they have a automatic foul vapors, so that gives you a new strategy available. They have shock resistance 20, cold resistance, poison resistance. They can sail up to size 7, so this is finally somebody who could sail around with your other Sacreds. Unfortunately, they have Reaper 5, which means they just kill your population by being there. And they give Unrest, I believe, too. So that can be really rough if you have these guys sitting around. So don't have them in your major recruitment centers, your major money makers, but very good unit. And they have Master Smith. So that increases their magic path for the purposes of crafting. So you can craft a lot of things just right off the bat. And if you had to summon up a couple of them to get some different paths, you could really climb things rather well. With Death 4, I believe you can climb all the way through Death. So that would be his hardest one to do, and you can get there. Very interesting, worth considering when you're doing Pretender design. As for National Heroes, Baratos has 3, and I feel like all 3 are pretty decent. We have the Bride of the Gods, and she brings in access to Death that we otherwise normally have. And Death 3 is very respectable. If I get her in a game, I like to send her out site searching and hopefully break into Death pretty decently there. We don't need Death for anything particular, but just Death in general is pretty powerful. If nothing else, we could grab some Long Dead or something and use those along with our Foul Vapors from our Telkines. That would be a good combo. She's also strong in blood, strong in fire, so good amount of paths here. Otherwise, not particularly notable compared to your normal Brides-in-Waiting. We have the King of the City, a stronger Melkart. He gets the additional lightning attack similar to our Shed demons that we can summon. Otherwise, not particularly notable. He does have more pathing than the summonable Melkarts with both fire, air, and blood. Very solid there, no randoms. His leadership is also 230, so that is relatively notable. Otherwise, he shares his attributes with other Melkarts. So if you get him, don't be afraid to use him. He's not that special compared to your other Melkarts, and while his extra pathing is good, it's not so good that like you need to treat him with kit gloves. Better to use him. He will be your strongest Melkart. Finally, we have the Queen of the City, which is a Telkine, and she's notable for a few things. First, she has really good path access. She's high enough in water that you can relatively easily boost that up and use her to summon other Telkines if you didn't create a pretender who can do that. She also has Nature 2, which breaks you into nature pretty solidly. So between maybe some site searching with Nature 1 indies that you found and her, you can make Thistle Maces and get going on nature a little bit there. She does not have Reaper, unlike the summonable ones, and she does have Healer 1. So if you have her like in a capital or a fort with some mages that have afflictions, maybe she could clear that out for you. It is only Healer 1, so she's not going to be able to cure up an entire army that's taken a lot of afflictions, but for helping a mage or two just get back and keep going, very good there. Otherwise, besides differences in pathing, she's relatively similar to your other Telkines. I would treat her with a little bit of kit gloves if you can't otherwise summon Telkines, just because that opens up a major strategic option for you that you may not otherwise have. If you get her super early, having her out there and doing Foul Vapors things might be worth thinking about, though, because that could be very strong if people don't think that you have that available to you. Beyond the spells that are relatively common that most of our other mages can cast, I do want to especially call out Blood here a little bit, since I haven't done it on the channel, and a lot of people have questions about Blood because it's kind of rare. Blood is very powerful, but very specific. One thing to note here is you don't generally have a lot of just easy, hey, I'm a Fire 2 mage, I throw fireballs. The closest thing you would have is the Blood Fire Crosspath with Blood Boil. Range 25 spell. It's very fatigue intensive. So you probably need to have like Blood 2 to bring that down to 25 before you can really get going. But it's armor negating for 11 plus fire magic damage. Can be pretty useful, especially if you can, like I said, get that fatigue cost down. Other than that, though, you're really looking at Sabbathing. So you have Sabbath Master and Sabbath Slave, which is our version of Communions. One of the changes to Blood is in previous Dominions, Sabbaths were the same thing as Communions, and they crossed. So you could have a Communion Master with Sabbath Slaves. That no longer works. They are separate. Note that you have to have a Blood Slave to use Sabbath or Slave or Master. So even just to turn it on, you're burning a slave right off the bat. And Blood Slaves are units on the battle map. So unlike carrying around 3 death gems that are just safe while I have them, arrows can kill your Blood Slaves. Battlefield magic can kill your Blood Slaves. All kinds of things can happen to them, and then you go off script because you don't have what you need. So it's more fragile than Communions already are, which can be a little frustrating when you're just kind of learning. So if you're going to be using these, I would say bring extra people to join. Like if you think you only need 2 slaves, maybe bring 4. So that if something goes wrong, you have some backup. You're probably also going to need to have somebody in stealth bringing around a whole pile of Blood Slaves, because even once you've got that up and running, most of the things you're going to want to do in your Sabbath are going to require Blood Slaves. Fiery Imps is a ritual. Summon Imps is a battlefield. Summon Imps is pretty good. You get 5 Imps that are summoned in. They're size 2. They can fly. Good spell. They like to fly in, mess up mages and things like that. Past there, Agony can be pretty good. It's got an okay area of effect, and while its damage is low, it's major fear. So it does 3 fear damage compared to most fear spells, which only do 1. So very strong spell there, especially if like maybe you do that towards the end of your script once things have already started taking some damage, or maybe you found a way to get Wailing Winds up from one of your Telkines, or you're doing Blood Rain or other things, other fear units on the field. That could be a very potent, just like glass poke to get people to run away. You also have Hell Power. This is like a super buff to the caster, but note, it horror marks you. So you're basically putting a death mark on your mage when you do this. Your Melkarts can all do this. Why would you want to do this? Well, it gives you a lot of stats. A lot of stats. So if you're in a desperate situation that you need to 1v1 something and win, this might be a way to go. And you would probably need to up your blood or be in a Sabbath to do this because it requires 3 blood slaves just to start. So you can't spend blood slaves to lower that even more. So very expensive spell, very situational, but powerful when you want to use it. At only level 3, you get our Scapegoat spell. So that's our Sair summon. Very handy, only requires blood 1, so all of our priests can do it. Leeching Touch is another nice one. It's only range 1, but anytime something gets near one of your blood mages, this does not have a blood slave requirement. They will like to cast this spell, and it's armor negating, life draining. So it can be pretty powerful if they start getting it off. Pain Transfer is another one that can be pretty useful. Back into more summoning things here. Hellfire, pretty good spell again. Area of Effect 3, and you get 2 of those effects. High fatigue cost, though. But it is armor piercing, and again, magic fire damage, so can be useful, and you definitely could cast that on your queens or some of your Melkarts. Bloodlust is a spell that needs to be called out. So this is a battlefield-wide, relatively cheap. You could get this off on a lucky priest or on any of your brides-in-waiting, and it will give all demons increased strength. So remember, your Sairs have 3 attacks. I believe this is 4 strength, too. So makes those guys hit like trucks, but any of your Sacreds would be happy to get some extra strength. So something very worth considering. Note, though, it's not targeting Sacreds, it's targeting demons. So if you're summoning other kinds of demons that are not national spells, this would affect them. If you're doing Melkarts, this would affect them. Sairs would affect them. Sheds, this would affect them. Not Brides-in-Waiting and not your normal Sacreds, because they are not demons. Hellbind Heart's another interesting one. It only takes 2 blood, so again, a lucky priest might be able to do this. It only targets 1 person, but if they fail their save, they join your side. So you could steal somebody's thug or somebody's Sacreds or things like that. So it can be very powerful if you're getting thugged or something. A few people to throw some of those on them, and all of a sudden you have a new thug, and the enemy does not. Also note here, Bind Demon Knights, still a pretty strong unit. And you can get these paths, so you can cast that natively. Reign of Toads, difficult for you to cast, but you could probably empower someone with a little bit of nature. This is a good one for throwing on enemy major income areas, because it's 40 unrest for a single cast, plus 3 misfortune, and it diseases things. So 2 or 3 of these at a capital can just sink their economy, and it's going to take a while to patrol down that much unrest. So could be interesting. Again, empowering to Nature 1, it could be doable. It could be doable. Bloodletting, Area of Effect entire battlefield. This one's going to be harder for you to do, but definitely within reach. You try to drain blood from everyone on the battlefield, and you add it to yourself. So this is one that maybe your super combatant Melkart would consider. But note how high the fatigue cost is. So you'd have to have a plan of how you're going to do this. And I think we're going to stop at 6, but I did want to make it all the way to Melkarts. 3 blood, 2 fire. Brides-in-Waiting can definitely cast this. Only 99 blood slaves, which sounds like a lot, but remember, you can just keep scaling up your blood hunting as you acquire more territory. Over in Conjuration, I will just show here. This is at level 3, all of our nature summons, minus our Lilith, who is a 5, and our Telkine, which is all the way up at 8. So if you want to do summon Telkine, though, you're probably going to need to design your Pretender to do it, because without a Telkine, you're going to be doing a lot of work to get something up to Water 5 when you're going to start at Water 2. So you're probably looking at some empowering and a lot of forging. So that would be very difficult to do, but doable. It is doable. And you're not going to have tons of other things you want to spend water gems on. So if you're just swimming in water gems, maybe that is the route to take. Okay, so let's bring it all together here. So we are a nation that has good troops that are not super expensive, but could require a little bit of production if you want to do some scales expanding with your heavier troops. That being said, you have perfectly serviceable spearmen that are relatively cheap. You also have usable cavalry. You have elephants if you like that. You have a usable, if not outstanding, sacred. But you're probably going to want a decent bless because you have summonable sacreds. So whatever they get, it could be something that your Colossi warrior could use. You have reliable, good mages. Getting a reliable air 2, water 2, or the brides in waiting with the fire, air, and earth and blood. Very serviceable. You have a good researcher, which you're going to want because you want lots and lots of magic. Your different mages tend to want to do different things that come from different schools. So you're going to kind of be scatterbrained on where you want to go with all of your magic paths. You're going to want a lot of research. You're also going to want a lot of sages because you're going to need to be doing tons and tons of blood hunting. So we're going to have a lot of mages recruited. We have troops that we might be using, so we're going to need a lot of income. So to me, this is a nation that wants a decent bless and some scales. I don't think I would want to tank scales for like a super bless because you're going to need to be able to at least fund your blood hunters. And you can't natively summon in like vampires to do your blood hunting. You'd have to put in quite a bit of work to do that. And while doable, that would be so late in the game. I don't know if that would be worth it, especially since you have native national blood summons that are very good. So overall, I would say you probably want to think about something that is a good bless, maybe something that's very good value, and some scales. I made a few different things to test it. I went the gambit from what I would consider moving towards almost a Hellblast with how expensive this was. So larger, yes guys, the meme is here. Don't let your dreams be memes. It's real life. Larger is good. Larger is very good on this nation because we have lots of size 4 sacreds that would appreciate the extra hit points and the extra strength. So on this guy, this is a dormant because of the vampiric weapons. Not super good on your recruit sacreds, but vampiric weapons on the shed can be good, but note, I believe that you do not get the damage proc / drain if your attack kills a unit. And your shed are so strong, especially with larger, they may one-shot units and you may not get vampiric to go off. So that could be a little iffy. Same with the Melkart. He hits so dang strong, I don't know if you're actually going to get a lot of use out of vampiric weapons. As for your normal sacreds, you probably will get some, but they only have 1 attack. And really with something like vampiric weapons, you want multiple attacks to really keep that rolling. So usable, but with these bad scales, you're going to expand a little slower. I wasn't super impressed with this. You're immobile, so you're counting on summoning in Melkarts to claim things for you. I don't know. It was okay. I tried it on a different chassis. The other one was just more cost effective. So if I was going to go that route, I would go with the Fountain because he starts with more blood. I do like this calf, though. This is a chassis that we get a discount for. It is relatively cheap. This is only 110 because we get a 20-point discount. It is immobile, but like I said, we have summonable Holy 3, so that's not the end of the world. This one is notable for being imprisoned while having all of its blessings. So I didn't go with like a total multiplayer, I'm just going to take a bunch of pure stat things, but this is pretty darn close. So with larger and enchanted blood, we have more HP, we have a little bit of regen from enchanted blood. The extra magic resistance isn't bad because things will be trying to banish your demons, and this will help them out there a little bit. Stopping the bleeding is nice because we have lots of units that have lots of HP, could be useful there. Blood Surge, very, very nice. It's usable on your Colossi warriors, but it's good on your other things. The Melkarts can appreciate the extra reinvigoration, the extra attack, the extra strength. The Shed, very efficient. very efficient. They were probably going to get kills even before you gave them anything, and now we're gonna pile on 3 more strength on top of their 4 extra strength from berserking. They will become blenders with this, while having a little bit of regen, not going to bleed to death, a little bit extra protection from getting banished, and extra HP and strength from larger. I quite like this bless. The only downside is, if you don't get a wasteland, you can't summon in your Seir. So you're banking on finding a wasteland, and when I play, I'm going to prioritize finding a wasteland, if at all possible. And bonus points if it's in an area that you can fort, because you're going to have a pile of mages there, and that would be a juicy target for somebody. So you would quite like an area that could be forted on a wasteland that you can just manufacture demons till you win the game. That's what he'd like to do. That being said, though, we have 6 Dominion and very good scales. So you can get 6 holy points spent quite easily between either Brides in Waiting and or your Sacreds. Good scales. Like, this is fine. Remember, they like Heat 1, so we did not even take a penalty on that. You could even increase that and go with extra production or extra magic would probably be the 2 paths I would take. But I went for high income here so that I can use my mundane armies to claim land that I will later blood hunt, and the extra money can go into even more mages while I start summoning in more and more demons which don't have upkeep. So you can really snowball your army strength using something like this. Also of note, the extra growth 2, just to help counteract how much population we're going to lose from all the blood hunting we're going to do. And the Melkarts are going to be eating people. If you go the route of a Telkeen, they're going to have the Reaper effect going off. So growth is just nice to help counteract all that. Now, maybe there could be an argument made. Maybe you'll go with some sort of like death build, like a Hellblessed type thing, and you use that to try to force a wasteland. You could blood hunt an area down until it turns into one. And then that would guarantee, with a little bit of work, that you could summon in those Seir. But for me personally, on nations that don't have a particular death scale mechanic, I tend to like growth instead. Either slow the decline or just help with the income. We also have Magic 1 on this chassis because we want a ton of research. But if we go up to Magic 2, you have a -1 magic resistance in your own Dominion. And that could be a little rough with all those demons we're running around with. We would quite like it if people did not banish those. So I thought that was a decent compromise. With the extra order, that's going to help bring unrest down from all of our blood hunting, and up our income and our recruitment points, and a little bit of production because it was basically between production or luck, fortune. And when I go order, I tend to not like to go fortune. I like turmoil fortune if I'm going to go that route. So again, maybe you could go extra production and you could take some misfortune. So there's definitely wiggle room here. I definitely think you could play around with that to taste. I think because you have sacreds that are summonable, you have your recruit ones are okay, and you have a thug/super combatant chassis, I think you could do all kinds of blesses. You could go thug blessed, you could go... I probably wouldn't go mage blessed because while your Brides in Waiting are decent, your other mages that are recruit anywhere are not sacred, so they couldn't benefit from it. But I'd be curious to see what other people are interested in here. I guess I should also note, on this chassis, we also took 5 Astral Magic. That opens up 2 different things. One, we can teleport or gate. So even though this is a mobile, we can move around. So when you get betrayed by Rex in the last stretch to victory, you could teleport over there and clinch the victory instead of having to wait. And there's a special... I didn't show this. I should. Hang on. Let's bring our spells back up. In Blood Magic, there's a new spell. I don't believe this is existed before. Blood Moon. Blood Moon is a global enchantment, and it raises blood magic level by +1 for rituals and blood searching, and raises misfortune +2 worldwide. So this will really amp up the blood hunting that you're doing. So we can cast this if for some reason you were going that deep into a game. I mean, Blood 7's not that far, really, because you're going to go to 6 for Melkarts anyways. So maybe you're like, well, heck, let's just go there. Leech is another powerful spell we didn't talk about, but causes life drain and bleeding, I believe. So very powerful. So I could definitely see going to Blood 7, even as maybe an early research goal, if you're just really all in on Blood. And so 90 Blood Slaves, very, very doable if you're committed to blood hunting. So I thought it'd be cool. Maybe we could try it out, and even if I don't make it there, the possibility is there that it could be useful. All right, so there is Baratos, a very cool nation. Lots of things it can do. No major stinkers particularly, although I guess the Mage Pilot's not the most useful, but even he has a use case. And we have not only blood hunting, but we have national summons, two things that we haven't shown off particularly and are rather cool. So I'm super interested to hear what people think about this nation. I have not done particularly much blood hunting in 6, so if you have any blood hunting tips for me or to share, I'd appreciate that. And as always, if you've made it this far, don't forget to leave a like. That helps other people find the video. And hey, if you're not subscribed, I hope I earned your subscription, and I'd appreciate if you'd subscribe there. We're currently on our path towards 1,000, and it'd be really cool to get there. So I look forward to seeing everyone for the stream. Share your Baratos tips. Share your blood hunting tips. We're going a little evil this time around. Take care, builders.